Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are. I'd like to welcome you to this special broadcast coming to you live from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection in the city of Philadelphia, the state of Pennsylvania. Tonight, we're going to be discussing a very serious topic, one of which remains on the lips and hearts of so many people cut across our country. As you may be aware, 22 years ago, a group of people came together and officially declared what is now known as the Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This process started so many years ago and championed by Black women and women of color. Interestingly, some of those advocates was the likes of Rosie Park, Camilla Chakis, and hosts of other permanent advocates, some of whom have been called home to glory. But despite them being away from the stage, their legacy still lives on. During those years, a wide range of social activism continued all the way to the mid-70s. And history books tells us that during that period of time in history, thousands of women and advocates brought to the spotlight the stories and the cries of survivors, and they also used the opportunity they had at the time to heighten the awareness of sexual assault on our planet. In 1971, those advocates were very successful in ensuring the first establishment of a rape crisis center. That center still survives today. But more precise, they went further in 1993 when they amalgamated all of the forces and led a vigorous march to ensure the passage of what is now known as the Violence Against Women Act, a bill that seeks to protect women's rights and children across the United States and beyond. Tonight, we've come as a community, as a family, and as a people to continue the efforts of those legends. Every year, April, since 2001, when they officially declared this movement, the month of April has been set aside as a Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So tonight, we are here. And interestingly, the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania, that has been headed by Madam Sioni Kofa Komete, alongside the Women's Commission of Philadelphia, has put together this initiative. A moment where we come together and discuss those issues that matter most, not only to women, but to our little girls. Tonight is a stressing night. The leadership on the dynamic stewardship of Madam Komete has assembled what one would call experts in various fields of life. These individuals, some of whom bring to the table professional years of health practice experience. Some of them have years and decades of law enforcement experience as well. Some are community leaders, others are social workers. We also have tonight a forensic psychologist in our midst. These individuals have come from a array of backgrounds. They will share their perspective tonight on the issue of sexual assault awareness. But before we move forward, I'd like to remind you of this year's theme. That is drawing connections. Prevention demands equity. That's the theme for this year's event. And like I said, this event is being held in collaboration with the Women's Commission of Philadelphia and that of the Women Against Abuse. We also have several other partners who have lined up to ensure the success of tonight's event. But just before I bring to the full screen my guests tonight, I'd like to inform you that tonight's program is being brought to you through the kind courtesy of the Liberian Radio and Television Network, one of the outstanding and premier media institutions in our state. Liberians, fellow friends, wherever you are tuning in tonight, I'd like to say welcome. I am your moderator, Stephen Bender, and I serve as the Deputy Press Secretary for the Union Liberian Association in the Americas. With that being said, I'd like to bring on to the stage the national president of the Union, not the Liberian Association president, Madam Siondi Komate, who's going to give us a welcome remarks while we begin and continue this event. With that being said, I'd like to welcome Madam Siondi Komate, who's the president of LAB, for the special welcome remarks. Good evening, Madam President, and welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. I was put it out a little while ago, but I'm back in. Thank God. Thanks for coming, everyone, and good evening. We are here today because we are here to share our thoughts on what has been a pressing issue in our community. The act of sexual assault. LAP has thought it wise to come to the community and bring everybody and bring some people, some experts in to listen to their expertise on this topic, the prevention of sexual assault and abuse in the community. I'm glad you all were able to come in. Welcome. I appreciate it. And so we are here to talk about this topic, taking the elephant out of the room, I would call it, because for us in our culture, that topic is the elephant in the room. It's not something we usually sit and talk about or discuss, but it's happening. It's in our community. And so there are many people who are victims, and we know it. And so there's no need not talking about it. When we start to talk about it, it would maybe help our community to prevent it. And so we thought it was wise to bring it out to everyone here so we can all listen to the experts from the background, what they have to say. I know we have a nurse on here, the police officer should be on here, a psychologist, and a councilman, a government official, and a reverend also, to come to us and give us a perspective of what it is and how can we prevent this in our community. So I want to welcome all of you, and I want to thank you again for taking up your time and coming here on behalf of the executives and board and members of the LAP. May we listen and take this seriously because it's a serious thing that's happening in our community, and we need to find a solution to it. But the first step is to talk about it. So I'm glad to take that bold step. We're glad to take that bold step to take the elephant out of the room today and talk about this topic. I want everybody to be free to listen. I know the audience listening, and you can ask your questions and questions that you want to ask afterwards. And we'll be talking about this more often because this is a situation we need to tackle within our community. And so thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming and taking up your time. Steve?
Thank you, Madam President. Like I said, she's the president of the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania, Madam Siondi Kofa Komate. We want to thank you so much for such a splendid introduction. We move on with the program. Next, we will call on to the stage the National Vice President of the Union of Liberian Association in the Americas, ULAT. ULAT is the mother umbrella organization that represents all Liberian organizations across the United States. Tonight, we are blessed and we are humbled to have in our midst Madam Minerva Grant, the National Vice President, who's going to make a special remarks tonight. Madam Vice President, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bernard. I'd like to say thanks to the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania, the president, members for inviting Eula. This is, as she said, this is a topic that we need to keep talking about in our community and our community. When I say beyond, we talk in Liberia especially. When you come to sexual assault and sexual violence, it going on. It's something that going on. As much as America is a developed country, I mean everything, the most powerful country, we still have sexual assault being something that people don't really talk about, and people it happening, and people hiding from it. We have a lot of survivor. People now, we don't call them victim, we call them survivor. So this is a good topic for us, the immigrant. We know it like a taboo sometimes in our culture, but we need to talk about it for our young girls and young boys. It's not only women, but boys, men too suffer from it. So we happy to be here on behalf of the president, Mr. Shehu Kamara, the executive, the board, and the rest of ULA, the rest of the Liberians in the Americas. We say thanks for inviting us, and we look forward to working with all communities, all associations that want to talk about sexual harassment, sexual assault. They want to bring the awareness in their community. We look forward to working with them, collaborating with them. We have professionals in the Liberian community that can come up to, sometimes when we get our own people talking about it, people tend to listen and talk, especially about trust. So I believe these professionals are on to, I hope people turn in and know that we have Liberians, that they understand your culture, they understand where you're coming from, and you can talk and you can come and talk about it. And we, like you said, we hope to have a safe space, because to talk about sexual harassment and sexual assault, you have to have that safe space for the survivor to come and talk about it. But again, I will stop here and say thank you. We are here. Yula is here to work with any organization. You don't need to be part of Yula. But once you call us and we know that it's a topic dear to our community, we are here to work with that, because we want our people to be aware of what's going on in the community and where they can seek resources and help, and we can take it from there and go to Liberia to put it there, because Yula Mission is not only helping Liberians in America, but also impacting Liberians in the Republic of Liberia. So again, I will stop here. I'm on, and thank you, the Liberian community in Pennsylvania. Thanks for having this thing, and we hope that's something we can continue every year and maybe make it bigger. That it could be partnership with all the other chapters that in the East Coast there, and maybe the North, the South, that can come together and make it bigger for people to know whatever topic. You'll now have program that they're doing the last Friday or every month, that we're going to be tackling women issues. So stay tuned for next week Friday. We will bring we'll be talking about women issues, and it will be the flyers will go out there. But thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. She's Minerva Grant, the National Vice President of the UN Liberian Association in the Americas. If you're just joining us, we'd like to say welcome. This is a special broadcast coming to you live from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, the state of Philadelphia, state of Pennsylvania, and the city of Philadelphia. And tonight, we are talking about sexual assault business. Like I said before, we've invited an array of experts from various fields of life, and all of these experts will be sharing their own perspective tonight on this very important issue. Again, we'd like to thank the leadership and members of the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania for creating this space where all of us can assemble and discuss this very important topic. As we move along tonight, you will hear in the next few minutes from our very first speaker, a man who has acquired a very great deal of education and respect in his community, a man who is a native of Liberia, a reverend, a father, but most importantly, a statesman. He's no other but Mr. James Barkley. Mr. James Barkley is a Liberian born and raised in the West African state. In 2000, Mr. Barkley obtained a BBA degree from the University of Liberia. He later migrated to the United States, where in 2011, he obtained a Master's of Science in Human Services from the Kampala University. Moving forward, in 2023, this year, January, Mr. Barkley went forward to obtaining a Master's of Science in Social Work from the Regis University. Our next speaker is a pastor, a community leader of the Liberian Community Association in Western Jersey, New Jersey. Currently, he also serves as the Secretary General of the Board of the UN Liberian Association in the Americas, ULA. But the biggest of all, in November of 2022, the Right Reverend James Barkley was elected as city councilman in the city of Pleasantville in New Jersey. Tonight, we are humble and we are pleased to welcome our first speaker, Mr. James Barkley, who's going to provide his own perspective on the topic sexual assault. Mr. Barkley, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for your service to our community and our nation. We look forward to hearing your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that elaborate introduction. I'm very much thrilled when I heard all the things about myself. But I want to extend my compliments to the great leader of the people of Pennsylvania, Madam Seyondi Kofa Komote, for her farsightedness in organizing this forum. And I also want to recognize you once more for being our moderator here. You have done a tremendous job by organizing resources in such a short term to put together this forum. I want to recognize the presence of the leader, the second in command of the Union of Liberian Associations in the Americas, our Vice President. Madam Vice President, I say welcome. To our audience, I would like to applaud you for your courage to lay aside all engagements and choose to participate in this forum. As you have already heard, my name is James Barkley. I'm a father, a husband, a person that is surrounded by too many females in the household. So this topic is very much important to me. But tonight I'm just going to give you some excerpts concerning the time factor. And maybe in future we can go into detail by discussing how we can bring this topic home to our Liberian scenario. I was invited to speak on the topic sexual assault. During my preparation and throughout my studies at Capella University and Rutgers University, I encounter words that are synonymous to sexual assault. And one of such words is sexual violence Therefore, allow me to prepare your minds as the words will be used interchangeably during these deliberations. First of all, what is sexual violence? Sexual violence is when an individual engages another sexually without the consent of the other person. And who can commit sexual violence? Anybody can commit sexual violence. Who can become a victim of sexual violence? Anybody can become a victim of sexual violence. But one thing that is particular in the execution of this crime is each time we try to investigate the genesis of sexual assault, it comes down to a familiar face. It's always sometimes someone that you know, either your spouse or family member or someone you entrusted your child or your life in that comes toward you disappointingly and displays such attitude that is unacceptable. But why is it that sexual violence is difficult to be solved? Now, to answer this question, I took into consideration the diversity that comes to play culturally. There are some cultural orientations that forbid survivors to speak about their experiences on social sexual assault. There are community stigmatization that people are afraid of. Sometimes the victim is disbelieved by the community. Sometimes the victim is blamed by the community. And sometimes the victim just experiences mere shame. As most of you are aware, in our own Liberian setting, where until recently these topics were taboo, they could not be spoken about, the victim, who is mostly most of the time a female, is blamed either according to the way she dresses, either because of the place she went. She has no business of going there. So this double victimization that the survivor experiences prevails upon them to take the stand that, well, I'm going to endure the pain and suffering and I'm not going to come forward. But to clearly understand why the survivor goes through, let us look at the effects of sexual violence. The effect of sexual violence goes beyond the victim, the survivor alone. Sexual violence affects the community, affects the family, affects the society in general. I'm saying this because it has to draw our attention. We have to create an avenue where this issue can be discussed without harassment and intimidation so that solution can be derived from those discussions. I will tell you one thing. I learned in school that the best solution you can find to counseling is through the client themselves. So I want to put forward that our approach should be to create an environment where the survivor will feel safe to speak about their experience without fear of repressor, without fear of intimidation, without fear of counterattack. But briefly, let us look at the impact on survivors who experience sexual assault. Individuals that experience sexual assault or violence are impacted in multiple ways. They experience emotional challenges like guilt, shame, self blame, embarrassment. They experience psychological and physical challenges. They react differently. All of these destabilizing factors boil down to something which we may not be discussing tonight, but that is very important: mental illness. I want to bring to your attention that when people experience sexual violence, they are traumatized. I know we are not discussing mental illness tonight, but please allow me to draw an association between mental illness and sexual violence. It is important to note that survivors of sexual violence experience mental illness in forms that are beyond their capacity. They experience post traumatic stress disorder, depression, substance abuse. These are all things that can be generated by sexual violence. But considering the time factor, let me come and throw a little light on how we can approach a direction that can lead to preventing and stopping sexual violence. Indeed, it can be stopped. Indeed, it can be prevented. We have to focus on education in several directions that I'm going to name tonight. We have to change our social norms that protect against violence. We have to prepare the community for bystander approaches. Too many times in gathering when people are being threatened, there are others who turn their faces the other way. I think if we all get involved by speaking to those that are aggressive toward the female within our community, this will bring attention to their action. We should learn how to teach skills that can prevent sexual violence, change, and produce social emotional learning techniques, teaching healthy, safe dating, and intimate relationship skills. Now, let me go back and elaborate on this a little bit. We have to teach people how to protect themselves. You cannot continue to trust everyone you see in your environment. Another aspect that is important that can help to curtail the prevalence of sexual violence in our community is to provide opportunity to empower and support our girls and our women. If women are empowered and if they are supported to sustain themselves, there will be minimal exposure from their part. We have to create a protective environment, improving safety and monitoring activities within our community. All of us know one another in our community. If somebody comes from another state and come to our state, we know them. We have to launch a surveillance approach that will protect our and our women. We have to support the victims, the survivors. This is very important. Like the vice president spoke in your intro, we have to introduce a community platform where victims can find freedom to express their experiences, to talk about, to narrate their story. They have to have sympathetic and empathetic ears that will hear their story and put forth suggestions that will help to support them. My fellow Liberians, I know this topic I enjoy it very much, but I want to narrow it down a little bit to give room for questioning and answers. That we as Liberians, we should try to change our attitude because most of the time I've observed that we live in America and still pretend that we live like we live in Liberia. We have to help the less fortunate within our community, especially those that are just arriving in this country. They have to be mentored and given strength to stand, that they can be heard and they can be protected in this country. Because the United States of America is a country of freedom, protection, and security for all. Fellow Liberians, I want to thank you tonight. I don't want to consume all the time. I'm going to stop this far and give opportunity for any question.
Thank you very much, Honorable James Barkley, for a very powerful perspective on our topic tonight, sexual assault. Just before we move forward, for you, our brothers and our sisters who are watching across the country, if you want to be a part, you can. And all you need to do is to call the number 484 340 8866. If you do have questions, comments, suggestions, you can put it through by calling the number 484-340-8866, and definitely we will definitely bring you on to speak to those issues or questions you may have. Again, we'd like to thank Ms. Honorable James Barkley for his perspective on our topic tonight. I just like to go around in the room to find out if any one of us have questions, comments for the honorable man having listened to his presentation. Do we have any questions? I see Natasha Sandy. You are recognized. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Natasha Sandy. I'm a registered nurse for about 13 years now, approximately. And I will be talking to you on the issue of sexual violence, assault from the nurse's perspective.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you, Madam Natasha, but just before you proceed, I was opening the floor to welcome questions and comments from anyone in the room. We just listened to a brilliant presentation done by the Right Reverend James Barkley. And so perhaps, some of our brothers and sisters in the room or across the country that are following us tonight by, social media, they might have a question and they are welcome to pose those questions if indeed they do have one. If you do have questions, like I said, you can call the number 484-340-8866. Again, the number to call is 484-340-8866. And then we'll put you through. You can post your questions to the experts tonight. Again, if you're just joining us, we are talking about sexual assault. This month, every April, is observed around the world as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And tonight we've assembled an array of experts from various fields of life who have come to provide their own perspective of things as it relates to sexual assault. So if there's no question, I'd like to move on to our next speaker. She's no other but Natasha Sandy. A big round of applause for Natasha Sandy. Natasha Sandy is a native of the West African state of Liberia. She's a licensed practicing nurse in the state of Pennsylvania. In 2009, she obtained a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing from the Wilder University in the state of Pennsylvania. Since then, she continued to work in the field up to 2013, where she became a lead nurse staff at the Liberian Medical Center in Pennsylvania, a position she currently occupies. Since her arrival in the United States, as well as the accumulation of her academic credentials, she's trained in assessing signs and symptoms that indicate physiologic and psychosocial change in patients of all kinds. Tonight, this licensed practicing nurse and person with Natasha Sandy will provide her perspective on the topic sexual assault. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome at this time Madam Natasha Sandy, who's going to come forth and provide her perspective on the subject tonight. Welcome, Madam Sandy. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. What a privilege. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the warm welcome. Like you said, my name is Natasha Sandy. I'm a registered nurse. I will be speaking to you on the issue of sexual violence, assault from the nurse's perspective. As you also stated, I've been a registered nurse for 13 years now, approximately. I graduated from Wilder University with my BSN in 2009. I'm currently enrolled for my MSN. So the issue of sexual abuse, is something that we encounter on a daily basis. So I'm very privileged. I want to say thank you to the establishment for giving me this opportunity to just talk to you about it, and I'm grateful. The previous speaker, Reverend Barclay, said it all when he talked about sexual abuse, sexual assault. Sexual violence is when you don't give consent and then the act takes place. But like he also said, it can happen to anyone and it can happen anywhere. In the United States, sexual abuse affects millions of people every year. But that number is even underestimated according to researchers. And the reason of the underestimate has to do with the fact that people are afraid, like those who are affected by it are often afraid to speak up. So the number, even though it said million, but it could be more. So it is a serious issue and it is a big deal because people who get affected from sexual violence get depressed, they suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, they become angry, they become bitter, they don't want to go to work, and if they do go to work, they underperform. So, and that's where we come in. In my experience as a nurse for 13 years, I've encountered people from different backgrounds. But it is, as a healthcare worker or provider, it's our responsibility to be very observant. And as a community, we need to be very empathetic and non-judgmental to people when these things happen. For example, a person could be sexually abused, and when they try to talk about it, you just feel, you don't want to listen to it, or sometimes we don't want to believe it. It also goes to even our children we have at home. You have to be observant to the changes in behavior, in the attitude. You want to be able to create a relationship with them where they can communicate and talk to you so that in the event where they are sexually abused or assaulted, they will be free to come to you immediately. And when that ever happens, then you will take the stand and support them. Um, so sexual, it is a big deal. We need to work as a community to create awareness, and we can do that by providing education to the community. Like the Reverend who spoke previously said, that we live in the United States, but sometimes we behave as though that we live in Liberia, because when you compare both countries and the culture, then we do things differently. So what could be considered sexual abuse or sexual assault in Liberia in the United States may not be considered as such. And when you look at Liberia and our background or other African countries, the issue of sexual abuse and assault is often then common in our tradition. So we can together in the community create awareness and provide education so that people understand that these behaviors are not allowed or you are being abused. And it's also, we need to teach them that there's support out there where they can seek support and go for information so that they are protected. You have the police, you have social work that can lead you. When I work in the hospital and we have patients who are sexually assaulted or abused and they tell you about it, then the social worker gets involved and they can provide all the information and put everything in place where that person can seek help and get support. So for our Liberian community as a whole, I am the health director for the Liberian community. During the summertime, I do intend to create a program or activity where I can share flyers to people in an effort to create awareness on sexual violence and also on other disease prevention and management. So it is my goal during the summertime that I will take the opportunity to also, work with other healthcare professionals in the community to provide education to the community as a whole. So again, sexual violence is a big deal. We need to take this opportunity to educate our community, the people, our kids, and make them to understand that we do have, there are support out there. To not be afraid to speak up whenever you are sexually abused, or even if you think so, because sometimes there is doubt. You may not think that's what it is, and oftentimes it happens from a familiar face. It could be your, even your own spouse or family member, friends or family friend who come to the house. Oftentimes, we want to educate our children that touching is inappropriate. When they touch you this place and that place, if the person come and call you their uncle and then they squeeze your breast, for example, that's inappropriate. You want to educate your children that they can report those things and not be afraid to do so. Because in one of the studies, when I was doing my research, it also talked that people who are often abused are abused before they are 25 years old. In that it happened when before they even become 18 years old. So it often starts very early when that child or individual is immature, or they don't understand what it is. Again, it is a big deal because it impacts you in so many different ways. It can lead to mental health, it can lead to poor work performance, it can lead to being bitter, and that impact, it can go a long way in your lifetime. So let's encourage our community to speak up, but we have to also first educate them so that they are aware of what is sexual abuse and where they can find support. So I want to thank you once again for the opportunity that you've given me, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. She's Natasha Sandy, a licensed practicing nurse in the state of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for providing your perspective tonight. We'd appreciate. Again, if you just joining us, you are listening to a special broadcast organized by the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania alongside a host of several organizations in the state of Pennsylvania, observing this month as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Tonight, like I said previously, we've invited an array of individuals from various fields of life who will share their perspective on this important topic tonight. If you have questions, you can pose your questions. The experts are here to answer your questions at the close of all of the presentations. Due to a time factor, we will definitely pause all the questions and we will definitely push all of the questions to all of the presenters at the close of their presentations. Let's make progress. Again, one cannot talk about sexual assault without talking about prosecution. Indeed, prosecution plays a very pivotal role in the fight against sexual assault, not only in the United States, but across the globe. And so, for that reason, tonight, we thought it wise to invite a law enforcement expert, one who has a deep knowledge when it comes to the legal parameters surrounding the effective prosecution of perpetrators of sexual assault and violence. Tonight, we do have another native from the West African state of Liberia. He's no one else but Mr. Musa Kaba. Mr. Musa Kaba brings to the fore years of experience, not only as a law enforcement officer, but also as a soccer fan and fanatic. Ladies and gentlemen, with no time to waste, I will now welcome to the stage Honorable Musa Kaba, who's going to provide his own perspective tonight from a law enforcement side as we proceed with this very important topic tonight as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Mr. Kaba, we'd like to thank you for coming tonight and being a part of this program. We want to say we value your contributions and we want to thank you for your service to your community and to your country. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thanks for inviting me on this special show. First, I want to thank the president for putting a very hard work into this program. And I'm probably here as a backup speaker for my department because the Philadelphia Police Department covers various of areas, and this topic is very sensitive, you know. And if we talk about sex offenders and or any sex or sexual abuse or sex offend or other sex offenses is a very touching area, and the department take this area very seriously. And as law enforcement or law or police officers that work for this city, and I just going to speak on in my area as police officer when we respond or when we get called relating to this matter. The first thing we do, we hold that place as a crime scene, and that's how serious it is. The first responding officers that get on that scene, we hold our house, we we hold the victim. If they're he or she, we make sure they are comfortable because they're very sensitive, questions to ask. And once we hold the house or we hold the area, we collect evidence. Every evidence out there, there's nothing touched in our house, and we have to contact special victim units. That's so the area in the department that are responsible, that do the investigation, also move forward with the charges. The special victim unit, along with the internal affair, but these are department within the police department that that kind of hold full responsibility that take over to press charges against the offender or the person that committed this crime. And when the first police officer respond at the scene, and if the offender is not there, we try to get full description of the person, clothes they're wearing, heights, and once we get all this information, we send a flash information out to the police radio right away, you know, where we have to actually track this person down. And when this person is arrested, they still have to go to special victim units where the investigation is followed, or the investigation continued from there. But from what I'm hearing from the other colleagues on the panel, especially in our community, I think this is something that need to be addressed because we are in the country of law. We are in the United States. To say I'm ignorant to the law, that don't play here. And a lot of time Liberians, fellow Liberians are in the United States. I think they need to be educated, like the first speaker mentioned earlier. Education, prevention programs, these are all things that need to be put in place. Because if I can go back when I was a probation officer in South Carolina, I served as a juvenile probation officer over there before I moved up here to the Pennsylvania area. Not only sexual abuse or sexual assault, we need to look at. Because if you mention anything that has to do with sex offenses, you're looking at rape, you're looking at indecent exposure. There are so many areas that our people don't know about. And when it comes to law enforcement, I think from my perspective, especially in the Liberian community, so far from my time in Philadelphia here, I think awareness is something that we need to address to the young kids, especially with the family. If the family can be taught or make them aware of some of the things or the law that govern this area, that govern this nation, or that govern, in the community, I think that would be a better way to make this awareness. And I like what the nurse also said. In the summertime, she provide information, she provide flyers and all the good things. But reaching out to the schools, you know, and the police department have a public relation department within the department itself. And the public relation officer, this is his. They also have programs that they can collaborate, with the community to make sure to reach out. These are all things that can be done to prevent anything from happening. And if those prevention programs are put in place, I think that might be one way to educate our diversity. Because if you look at it, we're all from different cultures. Sometimes religious belief, something that we do in our culture, it might be against what we're talking about here. But how can we educate the folks in that area? That's another area that we need to look at because it's a taboo in our community. People don't talk about this. And I can speak for myself. Since I became a police officer, I have lost a lot of people. A lot of people don't talk to me anymore. They're afraid to talk to me. And this is what we're talking about. Sometimes as police officer, we are there to, to break that barrier, to reach out to our community so we can educate them, so they can know what's going on here. That's the reason why I really want to be, on this call today, to reach out to the Liberian community that the police department, we are here to help. And you cannot be afraid when you see a police officer walking down the street. Let's get in the habit or even having a conversation with them, you know. And I just tell you that if our people are afraid to even speak to the police, what make you think they're going to be able to talk to us to give us this kind of information? And that's where we have to come up with some better programs, how we can address the issues, within our community. So in our way, we can close that bridge, or we can close that gap to build that relationship with the Liberian community or even the diaspora, to work with the police department, making people aware of such an issue. Because this is a very serious matter in our community. You know, like I said earlier, I'm gonna go back to the areas because another officer should be here with me tonight that's supposed to address some of the specific areas. Because once we respond as a first responder, once we get information, and that information is given over to the special victim units, where the victim is questioned and taken to the hospital probably to get more information on the evidence that will lead to then pressing charges against the offender. So, like I said, these are all special units within the police department, and I know they'll be willing if we can reach out to them or the Community Relation Bureau to see if they can find a way to help us to address some of the issue or create some kind of awareness, within our community at large. But as for law enforcement officers, we take this matter very, very seriously. You know, and I just want to end that. I just want to end on that. But we take this seriously when it comes to sexual abuse or sexual offenses or rape or any other thing that have to do with child abuse. We take that very seriously within the department. So if the police department take this as a serious matter, we need to make an effort to reach out to the community to educate, to make them aware, and let them know the consequences probably that will happen, especially for those who are thinking or even in the midst of this kind of, that in the midst of doing this kind of thing. So I just want to end on that note.
Thank you very much, Honorable Musa Kaba, for providing your own perspective. We do appreciate your interventions and all of the little tips you provided us tonight. Again, if you just joining us, you are tuning in to a special broadcast organized by the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania. We are coming to you tonight and discussing sexual assault awareness. Like I said before, every February of each year is celebrated globally as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We just listened to our law enforcement presenter. Next, we are about to listen to our next speaker. She's a female, a native of Liberia, who migrated to the United States at the age of 11. In 2009, she obtained a BA degree in psychology from the University of Maryland. And then subsequently in 2011, she obtained a Master's of Science in Forensic Psychology from the Arosa University in Phoenix, Arizona. This next speaker is a mother, a community leader who in 2018 to present has provided an array of services to several health institutions, including law enforcement agencies in the state of Pennsylvania. To date, she served as a jury consultant and a therapist for the Greater Philadelphia Health Action Network. Entrusting in her role, she developed comprehensive biophysiological assessment and treatment plans to individuals needing needs in the field of psychology. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we welcome our next speaker, who is Madam Emma Gawe. Madam Emma Gawe, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate your contributions to our community and to your nation. Thank you and welcome.
Oh, Mr. Bender, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. Thank you to the president of LAP, Ms. Sayandi, for having me be a part of this process. As she mentioned earlier, this is a huge elephant in the room, okay, especially in our African communities, especially in Liberia. So I say thank you because it's a conversation that has to be held. And thanks to my fellow panelists for all of the information provided. As Mr. Bender mentioned, my name is Elma Garway. I do have my master's in forensic psychology. And the quest for that was because that was not a field that was very, it's not a popular field, or it wasn't back in 2011, and still isn't, but I always had the hopes of returning home to Liberia and using my degree to help better the criminal justice system. Okay, so we're talking about sexual abuse, but I'm going to focus on children and teens. I'm going to give a few statistics overall and then focus on our statistics in Liberia. So bear with me, a lot of the cases go unreported. So some of the data might not be as accurate. However, you will get the bigger picture. So just in the United States alone, every 9 minutes, there's a call that's made about sexual abuse. 34% of the 34% of the children, 34% of children under 12 are getting sexually abused. 66% of children 12 to 17 are getting abuse. 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 9 boys under the age of 18 experience sexual abuse or assault. 82% of all victims under 18 are females. Females 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape. Okay, so with that being said, in Liberia, there was a study that was done. There was a study that was done in about 32 counties. So of those villages that they did the study in, 4 in every 10 girls between the ages of 13 and 14 were molested or experienced some type of sexual abuse, okay? So the report says 28% of those girls reported having been touched in a sexual way without their permission. 24% of those girls reported that someone that they knew had molested them. 8.3% of the girls had been persuaded and 10 to do sexual favors that they were uncomfortable with. And 10.65 of the girls had been giving money of favors to initiate contact. Okay, so there are 5 stages of sexual abuse. Okay, I'm going to go over, we don't have that much time, but I'm going to go over the 5 stages just to give awareness. And like Dr. Barkley said, most times it's not strangers that come in from the street to molest our children. It's a brother, it's an uncle, it's a neighbor, it's a pastor. So sexual abuse has no face, okay? So the more that we understand the signs of what those look like, sometimes we can identify it in our children. So I'm going to go over the 5 stages real quickly, and then I'm going to give preventative measures that we could take as parents or as guardians to limit the amount of abuse that is happening around us and to our children. So the first stage is targeting the victim, often chosen by sizing up a child's vulnerability, emotional neediness, isolation, and low self confidence. This can be done through social media platforms with direct messaging. So, most times, the abusers like to target that victim. The second stage is the bond, right? Gaining trust from that little girl. Offenders gain trust by watching and gathering information about the child, getting to know his or her needs and how they can fill them. They may also work on gaining trust of the parents, like, hey, you could let your daughter come spend time here. So they try to build that bond. The third is filling a need, seeing sometimes where the child is lacking something, maybe the parents can't provide, and offering, oh, I can buy you that pair of nice sneakers that you need, luring them with gifts, okay? The fourth stage would be access and separation. The grooming sex offenders use the developing special relationship with the child to create situations in which they are alone together with that child. Parents may be working, parents may be upstairs because the bond has been created. So the parents feel like, hey, I can run upstairs, take a quick shower, uncle this or auntie that is downstairs with the kids. And then the fifth stage is that's when the abuse begins, maybe walking on the child when they're getting dressed, saying little comments that, oh, you're growing up, or this looks good, righty. And the sixth stages, the sixth stage, which is the final stage, is gaining control, maybe blackmailing that child into, oh, if you tell this will happen, I will kill you. The child is young, their brains are still forming, so they don't understand that. There's a sense of blame and threats that they will give to maintain that bond between them and the child. Okay, so those are the 6 stages. I will go over again: targeting the victim, the bond, filling a need, access and separation, abuse, that when the abuse begins, and maintaining control. Okay, so oftentimes, and I fall privy to that, we're working parents in America. Sometimes our work schedule, we're busy, so we might ask our friends or neighbors or a babysitter to watch our kids, and sexual abuse has no face. That is the scary part of it. 90% of kids that get sexual abuse is by someone that they know, and that's even more scarier. So just a few, there was a study done back in 2013 where 55% of the women reported that they had to do sexual things to be able to get pay on their job, to be able to get food for their kids. So sometimes women are put in that position because they have to fend for themselves, okay? So boys, yes, do get molested, but little girls, women are the ones that are receiving it. Adult women on the job, discrimination. So it's a huge thing, especially within Liberia. A lot of the judges, the police directors, they're all males. So a lot of women feel shame and guilt reporting such information. If that information was to come out, the husband might leave the home out of the shame that his wife has been violated. So there's so much guilt that comes, especially as a woman in Africa. Sometimes there's no money to report the case or to go on trial, and the duration of the time that is going to take, who's going to watch your kids, who's going to cook. So a lot of these cases are not reported. So what are some things that maybe we could do to facilitate women in Liberia to be able to be vocal about their structure, about what is going on with them? Okay. And I will let you know, Liberia is the first nation in Africa that established, hold on one second. I'm so sorry. I have taking care of kids, mom. Okay. So I will let you know also, hold on. I should have been a little bit more prepared, but we got this. So Liberia is the first country in Africa to establish a national action plan to implement the United Nations Security Council resolution, the 1325. Okay, so this was adopted in 2000, where it calls include women in the peace building process. However, even with some of the implementations that have been put forth, we cannot escape the abuse, okay? So some things that we can do to limit, um, never leave your, like I said, this is more focal on children, but never leave your kids with family members. You let your children know about good touch, bad touches. You can't sit on anybody's lap. Nobody is allowed to wipe you, maybe only your doctor. Now, that's a conversation that we oftentimes do not have with our children. One, maybe nobody had the conversation with us. Two, maybe it's an uncomfortable subject to talk about with your kids. So I have a 5-year-old daughter. She understands what a good touch is, what a bad touch is. Nobody is supposed to touch her. Nobody is supposed to wipe her. So parents have to start having the conversation with their children as little as 3, 4 years old. Now, they might not understand the context of certain things, but they know nobody's supposed to touch me there. Secondly, boys do get molested oftentimes, and it's not spoken about. So talk to your boys. I have a client that, and this brought light to me as a parent, and this is what I want to leave with a lot of moms. She has a 12-year-old daughter and also has a 3-year-old daughter. So the 3-year-old daughter would complain about her pee-pee hurting. So mom would ask, "Does this person touch you?" "No." "Did uncle this touch you?" "No." And one day she was in the shower, and however the conversation came up, she asked, "Who touched you there?" And then she said her sister. So her sister was molesting her. Now, maybe the sister got molested, and the psychological effects that it has. People who have been molested will oftentimes molest other people. So there's child on child molestation, even though they don't fully understand the weight of it all, but they will do it to another child. So come to find out, the mother found out that the 12-year-old daughter was molesting the 3-year-old child, but the 3-year-old child didn't understand to tell her mom because she wasn't a boy. It was her sister. So parents, please, when you have these conversations with your children, it's not about a guy. Women molest women. I've seen stories where aunties molest nieces. So molestation in whole is not just a guy thing. However, that is the mass majority. So especially women with little children, the society we're in, the kids are so exposed to social media. Everything is hypersexualized. So make sure you're having those conversations with your children. No one can touch you, not sister, not aunts. And let us be more open with the conversation. So a few years back, just back to Liberia, and what I do as a forensic psychologist. So, there's a lot of crimes in Liberia, but mind you, sexual abuse is the second highest crime that's reported in Liberia. Okay, but sometimes there's no forensics evidence, so you can't even pin it to the victim. So I was in Liberia a few years ago. They had a few forensic machines, mind you. Nobody could work those machines because people didn't have the skill set. So I formulated a plan with the Justice Minister, Mr. Musa Dean, to see what can we do to start to have a system set in place for these guys. It's a broad scale of things, but we'll keep it to sexual abuse. So there's no way of testing the victim. So it's your word against my word. So imagine being shamed and coming up and then being told that you're lying. So there's so much growth that we have to do as a nation, that we have to do in our country. And not to downplay sexual abuse over the world, but I'm a Liberian and we're here to discuss that. So a few pointers that I came up with as a whole, just to be able to see how best we can decrease sexual abuse in Liberia. Okay. Sorry. I should have sent my points to Mr. Bender, and then I would not be having this issue, but we're almost through it. Bear with me. Okay. So a few things that I came up with to help decrease is, one, ensure that when the victim does come up to speak, to ensure that the police are adequately trained to respond to the needs of victims in sexual abuse. Patrol in locations where sexual abuse of refugees, women, and girls are likely to take place. Okay, such as bars, restaurants, even behind your house, wherever that you know that these are people that are lurking around, or these abusers might be guys on the street late at night. In line with Liberian criminal law, arrest anyone involved in crimes against women and girls, including rape, forced prostitution, forced labor, and child prostitution and abuse. Increase the number of female police officers in the borders areas, including the Women and Children Protection Section, and ensure that they're adequately trained to respond to victims of sexual exploitation. Encourage villagers participating in community police in villages in all areas that are host to refugees to report to the police any cases in which men solicit sex and refugees for women and girls, and help identify victims of crimes, including rape, forced prostitution, again, and child prostitution. Collaborate with your local women organizations to encourage them to report men that solicit, girls and women on the jobs, wherever you may see these instances. Okay. Um, Promote melee. Before I close off, the one main thing that I see that is fluent through all, especially in our communities in Liberia and the villages, a lot of the women, some of them are not literate. Okay, the literacy rate is very low. So when we educate people, when we teach them that your voice matters, you're not to be blamed of the shame and the guilt, and we can identify with them. If we share our stories, it might enable someone to come up and say, well, this happened to me too. So sometimes when people see people that look like them, or people that maybe might not look like them if they live in a village, and maybe they tie the lapa every day, and their hair is tied, they might think, oh, maybe it's just happening to me. No, it happens to lawyers, to doctors, to students. So education doesn't break any barriers of being sexually abused. However, if we were to have a literacy program to teach people the psychological effects, to teach them how to discuss it with their children and reduce the guilt, or just to have that open awareness, it could help us decrease the sexual abuse in Liberia. So there's so much more that could be said, but we have a little short time. Again, I want to say thank you for all of you for including me in this conversation, and I hope we continue to go further. I will give Mr. Benda the links for certain of the statistics that I found, and there's absolutely one or two documentaries that were done that I will love for you guys to watch on YouTube. So we're going to post that in the link and share. So thank you so much, and have a blessed evening.
Thank you very much. That's the voice of Emma Precious Gawe, one of our panelists tonight, who has provided a very in-depth perspective of our topic, sexual assault, during this period. We want to thank you, Managawe, for your excellent presentation. Indeed, we appreciate your contributions to the community and your people. But tonight, we cannot make progress tonight without admitting and mentioning a government arm in the state of Pennsylvania that is responsible to ensure families and victims are safe. Sexual assault all over the world and in these United States is one of those ongoing challenges that continue to confront our people on a daily basis. In the state of Pennsylvania, the Department of Health is responsible to assist Pennsylvanians live not only a healthy life, but a safe life. A department that is responsible to ensure the equitable distribution of the life gains of every other person within these borders. But what is the role and the in-depth scope of operation of the Department of Health and Social Welfare? We're going to find out in a couple of minutes. Tonight, we are pleased to have in our midst an employee, an outstanding one, of the Department of Human Services of the state of Pennsylvania. She's a Liberian, a professional, and a mother. She's no one else but Madam Sata Taylor. Madam Sata Taylor, welcome to this discussion, and we appreciate your contributions to your community and to your country. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Binder. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to say thank you to you and Madam President for this opportunity to talk to, through a little insight on child abuse and neglect, specifically sex abuse. Most previous speakers have already said a lot, basically, some of the points I was going to make. But this is just information, and this information is basically surrounding sex abuse in children. I've worked with the Department of Human Services, DHS, for 26 years as a child abuse investigator and its assessment or assessor. In the last 7 years, I've worked as a supervisor. I'm pleased to say I have retired now, so and I'm happy for that. But when we talk about sex abuse, especially in our community, it is it is like everybody else has said, the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about it. When children mention it, parents usually say, "Shut up, that you pa, or that you brother, or that you uncle, or that big man." You can't say that. So we as adults have to create a safe space, a safe and a comfortable space for our children to feel free to tell us what's going on. And contrary to myth, sex abuse does not have a statute of limitation. If you have been sexually abused as a child and you are now over the age of 18, you can still call the child abuse hotline either at DHS, which is 215-683-6100, or the state hotline, which is 1-800-932-0313. You can report abuse anonymously, or you can choose to call your name. And by law, your name will not be revealed to the parties on which you are reporting. And if for any reason you call as a mandated reporter and the investigator comes out to your home and is later learned by a family member that you called, you have a right to call DHS and complain on whoever that worker is that was assigned to your case. These lines are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the department investigates abuse between the ages of 0 to 18. But like I said, if you're over the age of 18 and you call a report into the department, that report would be referred to law enforcement. And that's when special victims comes in and Mr. Kaba and his team handle it from there. So if you know someone who has been sexually assaulted and is over the age of 18, you can encourage them to still make that call. And please, as parents, as caregivers, if a child confides in you that they have been sexually assaulted, you as a mandated reporter, and the mandated reporter is someone who is charged with the responsibility of providing care or the well-being of a child. It can be a parent, it can be a teacher, a nurse, a doctor. You are mandated by law to report that to the authorities. And if you do not, you can be labeled as a perpetrator by omission, which means the person that did it is the actual perpetrator. But because you knew or you enabled that person to abuse that child, you can be a perpetrator by omission. And you can be held equally liable as the person who committed the act. So we as adults in a child's life are charged with the responsibility of protecting that child. we are charged with creating a safe and comfortable space again for a child to confide in us. My experience at the department has been with our community, people do not want to talk, as previous speakers have reiterated. We do not want to address this situation, and it is serious because, like my previous speaker said, our forensic psychologist said, the child is groomed. All the 6 steps that she's mentioned are the stages of grooming a child, making that child feel comfortable, creating a bond between you, creating trust. So when you start to make comments like, "Oh, you fine today," oh, that child will say, "Oh," and sometimes smile it off, shrug it off. But that's the beginning of sex abuse in our community. So signs, what are some signs that we need to look for as parents and as mandated reporters of sex abuse? Pain or itching in the genital area. The child may have difficulty in walking or sitting down. The child may exhibit inappropriate sex play or premature understanding of sex, period. They may make some comments. The child, this person can come and kiss this child on the lip and put their tongue in that child's mouth, and that child will say, "Oh, Uncle so and so kissed me today, put your tongue in my mouth." We all know that that is inappropriate. And if your child comes to you and tells you that, that is serious. The uncle thing is one side, and we need to act on it. So, um, again, sex abuse is something in our community that we do not talk about. It's a stigma. People are ashamed. People think that if you tell somebody and somebody knows that you did something, they may not be your friends, which is not really something I don't care about. If you abuse my child, you can be my pa, you can be my husband. I'm calling these numbers and I'm reporting it. And these are things that we need to take seriously because it's affecting our children. Our children are becoming victims every day. And I've personally investigated some of our own families. When these reports come in, they actually look for people who know the community, people who can speak the language. And we go in there and we talk to them one on one. If you knew this was happening, you need to come forth. You need to tell us what is happening, or else you also will be held liable. Like from previous speaker said, we live in America, but we still act like we live in Liberia. If you report, no, nobody's going to hold you responsible. If you do not report it, that's when you're going to be held liable as mandated by law. So that's basically, in addition to everything else that has been said, that's basically what child abuse assessment and investigation does. We go out, like our nurse said, we are placed, social workers are placed in hospitals. We wish that we were placed in other places, but mainly in hospitals because the children come into the hospital and then they call DHS. DHS comes out, we investigate, and one important thing that needs to be known, that perpetrator, whether he has been proven innocent or guilty, has to be removed or we remove the child. We do not remove children if the parents cooperate. You can always identify a person, a family member. I would come and say, Miss so and so, it has been reported. We have gotten a report that your child was molested. Who told you? Ma'am, we are not here to discuss that. It's an anonymous caller, but we need to know, can the child be removed, or your husband or your uncle or your brother, if they live in the home, need to be removed, or you need to cancel all access that this person has to this child. Now, if that parent refuses to grant us access or to deny access of that child to that perpetrator, then we're going to have to remove the child from the home. And that's basically the first step in an investigation stage. And then, of course, the investigation will happen. The child goes to SVU, talks to a forensic scientist as our psychologist, and they will talk to them in child language. If the child is between 0 to 5, they will ask them questions that are geared towards their understanding of what happened. Sometimes they have doll play, and they'll put the dolls down and let the child show them what happened. Some children can be very, very clear and precise on what happened. Some children are a little shy or a little slow. But with nobody puts anything in a child's mouth. That's why our community, somebody I went out one time to investigate, they say, when our children come to you, they come back to us, they're different. You can tell them to say that their uncle did it. I said, no, man, that's not how it'll happen. So we need to keep educating our people on how the system works. If your child is abused, you need to call these numbers and report it. So without further ado, Mr. Binder, I would like to submit to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam Sata Taylor, for such a splendid presentation tonight. I think you landed us home safely. As per our agenda, we should be having our next speaker, Mr. Michelle. But from all indications, seem as though Mr. Michelle is not online currently, and so we want to make progress. Ladies and gentlemen, you've listened to all of our experts tonight. What a wonderful night it has been. Wonderful. Great speakers, great presentations. I'd just like to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the leadership of the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania for such a splendid presentation. Indeed, we just made a 360-degree sweep of the room, talking about all aspects of sexual abuse awareness month in America and around the world. Right now, it's questions and answers time. I will go right through the room. If you are listening and following us online by way of the Liberian Radio and Television Network, an institution that is bringing to you tonight this broadcast. And if you want to be a part, you are most welcome. The number to dial is 484-340-8066. Again, it's 484-340-8066. We do have our experts in the room. These are people who have been trained all their life to provide answers to your questions. And so if you have a question, a comment, or a suggestion, feel free to put in your concerns at 484-340-8066. At this time, I will bring all of my panelists back for us to discuss. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation tonight. I'd just like to say hats up to every one of you. It's question and answer time. If any one of you have questions, perhaps you're calling me a statement that probably you want to seek clarity on, or if you want to add an addendum to it, you are most welcome at this identical point in time.
Thank
I
you.
know while one of the speakers was speaking in person of Reverend Barclay, not Mary Barclay, I should say, but Natasha, sorry, we had a question come in from one of our followers online who said, thanks, Natasha. How do you deal with a child that cannot speak? This is a very important question, and I'll open it up. Any one of you guys can respond. Natasha, you want to go first, or whoever want to go first? Go ahead.
But I haven't encountered any child of, however, we do have the social work, we do have language and other department that can come in to help. So if the child cannot Augusta, we have language, the people who can read language, and we are to assist to that end. So the issue will not be left unaddressed, because we do have resources, to help with that.
Correct. Is there another person want to add?
Yes,
Mr. Kabak?
let me add something that real quick. I think Miss Osata or Caroline Taylor, she is on the ballpark. She is on the ballpark. How things work in Pennsylvania. I know we discussing other matter around the world, but the DHS work with the Philadelphia Children Alliance, which is a PCA, and the police, the Philadelphia Police Special Victim Units, and the district attorney to coordinate service for children victims of sexual abuse. The PCA, DHS, and SVU are co-located at 3000 East Huntington Park Avenue. Those departments, they are trained. They are trained psychologists, trained, forensics or agents. They will find a way. Doesn't matter. They will find the appropriate way to interview that victim, even if they cannot talk. And I know that for a fact. So Ms. Taylor hit on a lot of key points that we need to look at. Even me working as a police officer in Philadelphia, as a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve the community. That's the first thing we look at, because we take this matter. It is a very sensitive area in our community, and we need to start talking about those issues. And as for me, as police officer, I've been in the Southwest area now for almost 8 years, working on the street. Sometimes it's very difficult. Like someone said, there's an elephant in the room in our community that we need to talk. We need to reach out to our people. There are a lot of people hurting in this area, and they're not going to speak up. Me working as a police officer, it's a safeguard. It's to protect property, to protect the innocents against the deception. And well against the oppression of intimidation. Like with Southwest, we have a lot of diverse of people. We have people from different backgrounds, different, they speak different tribes. So if we're going to do this, this is a good way to build a team that every summer or every event that we go to, we have a flyer, how to that. We all are mandatory reporters. Even some people, they are mandatory reporters. They don't even know they're supposed to call this thing. So if that number is there, that's one number that Ms. Taylor mentioned, the 215-683-6100. There's a number that we need to put out there. It can be on any business though. You don't have to dial 911, because when you say police, people get afraid. But you can call it. You don't have to leave your name. You don't have to leave no information. Just a anonymous call. Just call and then leave that information. It will get to the right department and they will follow through. I just wanted to add that to what she said, because she was on point with what she said.
Thank you, Mr. Kabak, for your point. It's very well taken. Do we have any other individuals? I see Mr. James back there. Go ahead, sir. You are welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. When Sister Emma was speaking, there was a question that came to my mind, and I just want to throw it out there. How will a perpetrator whom themselves was abused, how should it be handled?
A brilliant question. Madagawe?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead. What is yours?
And the question was, could you repeat the question again?
All right, someone who abused somebody from the background that they themselves were abused before.
So that is where rehabilitation comes in, right? So oftentimes, like we say, hurt people. When you two are touched, you two are molested, you're going to exhibit those same behaviors. So there has to be a healing process. So if that person is rehabilitated, where they understand the behaviors that was done to them was wrong, that they cannot do it, and there's consequences to their actions. So oftentimes in Liberia, you see more of a reoffending rate because there's no repercussions for their actions. You understand? There's no hotline you can call if it's reported. There's none of that. So I believe just rehabilitation as a whole will help that victim understand that just because it was done to them in turn that they cannot do it as well. So I just think really rehabilitation and maybe therapy would definitely help to eliminate that thought in their mind.
Thank you, Managawe. Do we have any other questions?
I think he has something else to say. Go ahead.
Yes, when she brought that, now it gave me a question for Brother Kaba.
Yeah.
Brother Kaba, she spoke about rehabilitation. What would be your preference? Rehabilitative justice or punitive justice if you found somebody in such a situation?
It depends. It depends
Right.
on if you have a child that fall in the category, they have to go through or DHS, like Miss Tiller said earlier. They have to go through the child service. They got to be rehabilitated. You have to give them a psychologist or counseling service, and they have to go through that whole way of rehabilitating them. Well, if you're an adult, then that's a criminal offense. That's why we have the special victim unit. They decide in this area how to go with the charges. We have a whole department in the Philadelphia Police Department that set aside SVU that investigates in this matter. And the way they handle it is different from what I'm going to tell you. But every case is different. And that's where the treatment comes in, and that's where the sentencing comes in, and that's where the charges come. From the detectives. Go have detectives in the department that handle those cases. So every child is treated differently.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kaba. We do have a caller on the line. Let's go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. Your name and where you calling us from tonight?
James Koya, calling from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Koya, will you be a little bit audible? Go ahead. We are listening. What's the question?
James Koya from Pennsylvania.
You are live. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Let me say thank you to the panelists. I followed the show all night. I think it's a healthy discussion. All of us are aware that this is one of the stigma, especially in our community. And so the fact that Lab is collaborating with all of these organizations to educate our brothers and sisters is a laudable effort. I'm not an expert in this area, but from a family standpoint, I know a friend of mine who got involved with something like this, and today he's a registered sex offender. Let me come back home the Liberian way. We go to like Liberian parties or we go to Liberian gatherings, and a guy will see a girl and maybe just hold her by the hand or tap her on the butt, and that person reports that to the police, and you're investigated, you're found guilty. So the issue of sexual offense is not necessarily, in my opinion, not necessarily going to bear with a woman and then she telling you no, but the way you interact with them, even the look, and this is the thing that we need to educate ourselves about and educate our community about, because people don't understand that it is important that you don't just touch people, and that's one of our weaknesses in our community. People just touch people, at random, and not knowing that doing so is an offense. But I want to thank the panelists. That's my own little contribution tonight. I want to thank the panelists. Thank the leadership of the Liberian Association for organizing this conference tonight. We hope that we can have it again and more often, so that the wider majority of our people can really come in. People don't understand the gravity about being a sexual offender. I mean, your life as an African man or African woman is damaged. You don't usually work in any community. And now most employers have made it a requirement to fill out the NSOR form that you have to go and get a clearance. So hopefully we can continue this effort. Madam President and your team, I want to thank you so much for this deliberation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Well, just before we move forward, I'd like to pick up from the comment just made by Mr. Conway when he talked about touching inappropriately. The issue of touching, for the most part, has become a center of discussion for a lot of people who have been accused or people who have interest in knowing more about sexual assault. At what point and what part of the human body is considered an inappropriate part that if one touches can constitute an assault or sexual assault. It said the hips, it said the hand wrist. What part of the body is safe enough for the person to touch that he or she cannot be accused of inappropriate touching? That's my question that I have.
Well, can I say something before the expert answer?
Go ahead, Mr. President.
I want to say all parts of the body without permission.
Yes.
I think
And,
so.
I'll give it to the express. Yeah.
Let's hear from the experts. Mr. Kabay, you've been a law enforcement officer. Is it safe enough if a man goes ahead and grab the wrist of a female? Cannot person be accused of sexual assault?
You're touching a broad area here. Are we talking about harassment here first? We need to stick to the coast, because sexual assault and sexual harassment is two areas we can look at. Then we'll get off the subject. Let's just focus on the sexual, abuse. Because if we continue like this, we're going to deviate from the sexual assault. Now we're going to harassment, and that's a whole different area. Now we're going to start addressing. You see what I'm coming from?
I understand.
Because harassing somebody and sexually abusing someone is that's the area. Because if you talk about sexually abuse, talking about engaging in a sexual intercourse, or where you involve in a deviant sexual intercourse with a person against their will or without their consent, that's different from you harassing somebody or you're touching somebody, and the person says, "Oh, leave me alone," and put it away. Like in our community, these are all things that need to be addressed, because they might take that on their job one day, and because we are comfortable with it. You might take someone inappropriately, and the person going to report it to the supervisor. When you look, you lose your job. You see,
so,
even
Mr.
so, these are areas going to be got to address. All come to awareness and educating our people.
Yeah. Let me pose this question.
This
is my last question
moderator.
That's my last question, and then I'll go to the other guests. I'm not moderating. I shouldn't be. But yeah, I just want to throw this out because there are a lot of people out there who have the same questions and they don't know the answers. It's good that we ask these questions so that we can be able to enlighten our people. Mr. Kaba, you come from the law enforcement background. What will you say in terms of the frequency of reporting? Do we have a high frequency of sexual assault reports coming on a daily basis, or is that frequency low?
Well, I think it's very high, because that's what I was expecting someone to be on this call tonight to give the stats in a report in our area. I was just going to cover the law enforcement side of it, but that question is a very reasonable question. But I cannot give you an exact number on that data. But honestly, it's very high, because I know we as police officers work on the street. This is something that we encounter every day, day in, day out. So like I said, it's a broad area. Not only looking at the abuse part, you're looking at the child molestation, you're looking at and you're looking at even what's it mean? A lot of calls that we come across, we take the report, and the report have to go to the special victim unit, and they decide from there whether they need to go, whether they need to investigate the case or not. So I would say, I'm sorry the person has to be here with me tonight. They are not on this call, but the number is very high in our area, very, very high. And I can't give you a specific number, but it's very high.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Yes.
All right,
Mr.
Samuel
Bima,
Johnson, go ahead.
Right. So I have one comment, and then a comment and a question. So the first comment is I think all of the presenters tonight make us all proud. I think the presentations describes and captures how well we all want to live in a very healthy community. So my question tonight has to do with just the sexual assault. Now, to all of the panelists, can any one of you maybe just take on this question? What are some of the contributing factors to sexual assault?
Well,
contributing
Am I
factors.
loud and clear?
Yeah, you are.
yes.
Okay, just some of the contributing
Just before
factors.
we
I mean,
proceed,
because I got
Madam,
to text someone wanting to know what contributes to sexual abuse or sexual attack, and if there are any contributing factors, what I did, and what would be some of the solutions to those contributing factors.
thank you. I think that's a brilliant question. Can anybody pick up from there? Managawe, I just want you to know that you're still on set, and we appreciate if you can moderate the activities in your background. Managawe, thank you. Can anybody answer the question, please?
I can share my idea. I think there are many contributing factors. One of the main factor would be lack of education.
Right.
If you turn it to the Liberian community or the African community as a whole, then like I said previously, some of the things that we overlook in our community, like I give you an example. I used to work as a unit manager at this place, and the director of nursing there was a Liberian, an African. So we had a school relationship and we talk, and so one day while we were talking, and he said, "Oh, Tasha, how many kids do you have?" And I said, "Two." And then he said, I asked him as well. I said, "How many kids do you have?" And he said, "Oh, I have many." I said, "What do you mean many? Like
Oh,
for 8, 9, 10?" Then he said, "Oh, no, not 10, unless you want to give me the rest of them." And the social worker
oh,
was there, and she told me, that was sexual harassment or inappropriate when he made that remark. And I said to her, in my tradition, it's often common that would, say those things. I didn't think he was sexually harassing me. So a lot of it, one of the major contributing factor I would think has to do with lack of education or lack of not knowing what your limitations are. Like a man can spank you on the butt, as a Liberian or African, and you think it's okay. But when you come to the American culture, it is unacceptable, that sexual harassment.
Thank you, Natasha.
Mr. Binder, if I can just come in quickly before I
Go
leave.
ahead. You're welcome. Another.
One of in the child abuse arena or sphere, one of the main contributing factors to child abuse has been poverty.
yes.
People, and I'll just quickly expand on that. When a child is being abused by a particular person, and that person is probably the head of the home, he provides everything for that mom. That mom, in her limited way, will think that if she reports it, her support system is going to be cut off. So one of the factors, the most important factor that we have found in child abuse that contributes to child abuse or sex abuse is
It's economic.
poverty. Yeah, economic poverty, the whole 9 yards. So I just wanted to throw that in there, in addition to education, of course, that people are aware that this is what makes people don't want to come forward because
Mhm.
this person is going to cut off everything that they have. And they'll probably even go to court and lie and
Right.
say, this, it didn't happen. She lied on the man, of course, until the
Yep.
forensic experts come in and they find otherwise. Does that help in any way?
I think that's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you so
Sure.
much. We do have another question for one of our followers online. It says, how do you call the police knowing very much that your family member who is the abuser is not legal? He or she may be deported.
You can. Uh,
Let's hear
can
from
I
Well,
answer
Mr.
that?
oh, okay, go ahead.
Miss Stiller, you answer that. You say I've been
Oh,
calling you.
okay, okay. That's a question that has been asked a lot of times of me when I used to go into our community to investigate as a worker. So, but if I tell the people, my brother, he got people. So if I tell the people, then my brother will deport. Well, you know what? You have to make a decision between your child and your brother. And as a parent, I would definitely say here tonight that the welfare of my child precedes anything else, even my husband. If my child is at risk, I will report it.
Yes.
He should have thought about he not having paper before he went and touched that little girl or he touched that little boy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just my honest opinion.
Thank you, Manatera. Another
Sure.
question for one of our followers. Is there any person who want to add something to that question before I read the next question? I saw somebody hands up. Yeah. Emma, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on what she said. You know, the person should understand their legal status before they do that. And your child, as a parent, your only duty in life is to protect your children. You know, like I always say, I'd rather be the best mom than the best anything. So at the end of the day, because we sweep this topic under the rug so much, we defend husbands. Many a time, husbands abuse stepkids, but mothers won't say anything. They're aware they don't want to lose their husbands. They don't want to be lonely. So the psychological effect, first of all, the child that you're abusing, it will cause so much damages in that child. A broken child becomes a broken adult. So before anything, your kid's well-being is first. You understand? So the more that we begin to share this light on it, the less people will do it. If one of your friends get deported for touching a kid, you're going to realize I shouldn't be doing that. So we do need to keep reporting these things so that people can actually have a conscience, because they're not getting caught. They're not seeing it reported. So it's okay to do it because it's the silent, trigger. So absolutely, it should be reported. You could be my father. You will be reported. And then maybe while you're in Africa, you will think about the consequences next time.
Indeed, he should be deported.
Deported, absolutely, and reported.
Let's
Yeah.
move on to Reverend Barkley. His hands.
Yes,
Hands up. Go ahead.
I want to thank you very much. Some of the issues that cause sexual violence to exist and very difficult to be solved are broken down into two categories. They have the risk factor and the protective factor. Now, they broke them down into individual risk factors, which have to do alcohol and drug issues, can have people to get involved into it. Then they have relationship factors, where poor parent-child relationship. Now, particularly with fathers. Now, it came closer to answering the question that we are discussing. If you put relationship factor into consideration and you less value the child over the family member and refuse to report it, of course, you're harming the child. And another thing that bring about sexual violence and sexual assault is community factors. Community where there is poverty, prevalence of poverty, and the children have to be taking risk, going out in the night, going to buy stuff and being exposed, unprotected. So these are some of the things, but the relationship factor is a key one to address the specific question we are discussing. If you think about family issue and say, if I report it, it will be hurting my family, you'll be hurting the child. So I agree with those who say, well, you should have thought about your status before you mess with my child. You are going back to Africa.
Indeed, you are going back to Africa. Thank you so much.
And I think, Steve, just in addition to what Reverend Barkley said, I think also one of the risk factors could also be just a lack of adequate supervision. You have mom and dad doing overtime, and they are not in the home most of the time, and the kids are left by themselves. Yeah. So, that is just one key factor. I yield back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 9:05. I guarantee we'll be out of here in the next 10 minutes. But let's move back to all the questions. This one says, to the police officer, how do you know a child is being abused, especially not concerning our culture? People get married at an early age and turn over to their husbands and wives early. You are muted,
Moose. I'm sorry about that. Here we go with the tradition part. And that's what I say, education and awareness is something that we need to put in this. As a law enforcement, as a police officer, like I said, if we receive that call, my job is to interview that victim, which we're going to treat that victim the right way, make sure they are secure, make sure they are treated the right way, and they will be transported to a special victim unit. That's a different department where they have to ask them more questions, and based on the result, they can make that decision from there. You know, like I said, that's a whole different unit. And the question I've been asked, that's where the traditional parts come in. How can we explain that to our audience? How can we explain that to our community? Because this is a country of law. And it doesn't matter if you're underage, you get married and such thing happen, with the consent of the family, I can't decide on that. I have to go to special victim unit or DHS to do further investigation on our part. And these are things that is very important for the address to our community. So if they got married in Liberia before coming to America here, I don't know how old was that child when they got married. So was the family involved? Was it traditional marriage? And something that we did. Special victim units will look into that part to see what it can do to move on with it. But these are things that I'm also aware of. I'm from the Madingo ethnic groups. And sometimes tradition and law, it's hard to find the middle ground of that. But as a law enforcement officer, I have to make sure I enforce what I have to. If they call it in, I have to take the report. If they have to go to special victim unit, they have to go down there, and that's where decision will be made.
Indeed, you have to enforce the law regardless of who is involved.
Yes.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful. Another question we have: we notice most men from states come here to Liberia just to follow our little daughters. Do guys have any programs to educate them here? That's a question we have.
Mr. Bender?
Yep. The president could answer this one. The question is, somebody's asking, we noticed that most men from the United States, I guess, come to Liberia just to father our little daughters. Do you guys have any program? Do you have any programs to educate them up there?
First of all, let me say, we have to talk things based on facts. We have heard stories like that, but we don't know the facts of the stories. Like you say, someone was talking about the factors that contribute to sexual abuse. They talk about poverty, illiteracy, and all of that. And let me add the vulnerability factor, of sexual abuse. If the person is, we know that the adult age group starts from age 18 and upward. And then there's something, sometimes growing up back home and even here, we often hear about the talk of the culture. Because of our culture, we can't say this, and because of our culture, we can't do that. And it's a cultural thing. But let me say, the emotional state, the psychological effect of sexual abuse surpasses the culture. And that's why, we are sitting here today to take that elephant out of the room. Because it's that fallacy of saying, oh, certain times when certain things happen, it's our culture. But listen, no matter what culture you come from, be it Liberia or China or South Africa, the psychological and mental state of that person, that the victim or the person that's being abused, is universal. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're from Liberia or they're from America or from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And talking about back home, there are laws on the book that should be protecting the citizens of the country. So I will leave that with the law enforcement officers and the citizens and the people back home to step up to the plate, to stop allowing this to happen and the CA has a culture thing or because of poverty and that. Now, wherever it happens, that perpetrator should be brought to justice, no matter where they come from. So it's not because they're coming from America, so they're coming to the children in Liberia, so it's happening off from Liberia to America. No, wherever it happens, there are law that protects people against that. And that person should be taken to the law. So if you know someone in your area, if you're in Liberia, if you know someone who you think comes from different country and come to abuse people, report it to the authority. You know, there should be no excuse for that. I'm saying this is a hot and touching topic for me because I have been in and out of Liberia for many years of my life, for the past maybe 10 years, doing NGO work and working with children. And 2 years ago, when I went back, I met this lady who takes care of abandoned children. She takes them from the street, put them in school, and and try to place them with other foster kids and all of that. And visited them during the Christmas. We had a Christmas party for the children and everybody else. And after the party, was sitting down having this discussion, and I was asking her about what are some of the issues she's been coming across, and she says, and she showed me this graphic picture of a 5-year-old that was abused by a 35-year-old man. Now, that brought tears to my eyes. Seeing that graphic picture of what happened to that child. That shouldn't be happening. So the person was taken to jail for that, but it makes me to think, is there a mental illness when it comes to sexual abuse? I will ask a psychologist, because at that point I want to believe it has to be some mental illness part of it, because I don't see a normal person looking at a 5-year-old child and abusing them sexually. And it has been very prevalent in our community in Liberia, and back in our community here too. Sometimes I've heard stories. So no matter where you are, no matter where the person lives or where they come from, there's no excuse to bring justice. There's no excuse for not reporting it. If you see it happen, it doesn't matter where they come from. You will have the responsibility as an adult to report it. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Very powerful input. We'll move over to Mr. Sandra Johnson, and we'll go around the room. If there's another question, if not, we'll definitely wrap this up. It's 14 minutes past 9 o'clock. Mr. Sandra Johnson, the floor is yours. You are muted.
So just in addition to what the president said about somebody posing a question about people living here and exploiting minors in Liberia, and what would be some of the solutions to that, I think one of the best way to combat that would be to have stronger institutions that can enforce the laws. And I think once that is being done, where people know that there are serious consequences for their actions, they will modify their behaviors. Take, for example, here, you and I are driving down 95. A police officer is sitting there. He's actually not even, bothering us. But immediately after that police officer is being spotted, you will notice that the speed of everybody on that highway will begin to decrease, right?
Yeah.
And the only thing the officer is doing over there is helping us to discipline ourselves. So once we have stronger institutions where the laws can be enforced without the implementers of the laws being compromised, we will not have people trying to exploit younger women. People take advantage of that because they think they can use their own economic power to boost their way through, even if they are caught in the act. And so I think that is just one of the best ways to combat that. Build stronger institutions where the laws will be enforced, and people will not want to, exploit younger women, especially in, I would say, third world countries, not only Liberia, but places where, the laws are not stronger. So that would be my answer for that. Again, I want to thank all of you on behalf of LAP. I want to thank all of the presenters. I want to thank you also, Steve. And I think you did you did very well tonight, all of the presenters. I think this is a very sensitive issue. I mean, it's like a 10,000-pound gorilla that nobody wants to touch. It's like everybody wants to. There's a parable that says everybody wants to circumcise the tiger, but who's going to be the first person to tackle the tiger? Everybody will be standing around. And so sexual violence in our community is a very sensitive issue. And it is not only limited to people who are not in relationship with people. Most time, even people that are in relationship take advantage of people because they feel that they have that dominance control. I think it's a societal thing in certain quarters in our own society where we feel that women are second class, and because we are married to them, they should respond anytime when we want sexual favors from them. And in so doing, at times we go across the boundary and we get involved into a different form of abuses, sexual abuses. But I want to thank all of you tonight for the presentation, and I will hope that this would not be the last. And on behalf of the board, the executive, and even the listening audience, we want to thank all of you tonight for this participation. We hope that in the coming months, coming weeks, we'll carry on initiatives like these to at least throw some awareness in the community so that at least people can have a sense of how to go about if, say for example, if they are caught in such act, or if they are in situation like this, what are some of the steps that they need to take to just address the issues. And I want to thank all of you, and I will hope that we'll continue to do this as time goes by. Thank you again to all of the presenters, Steve, and everybody. Thank you so much. I yield back to you. I know we've been on for the last 2 hours. It's Friday night. Don't want to take much of the time, but I believe we'll see a lot of this coming on. And so I yield back to you, and I wish everybody a blissful weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sandro Johnson. You heard it. Sandro Johnson is the vice president of the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania. Indeed, this has been a pleasant presentation tonight through the kind courtesy of the Liberian Association of Pennsylvania. The Liberian Association of Pennsylvania happens to be the largest and the oldest Liberian community organization in the United States since 1976. Tonight's edition, again, has been brought to you through the kind courtesy of the Women's Commission of Philadelphia, one of those organizations leading the charge to ensure that sexual assault is addressed across not only the United States, but around the world. We want to thank all of our partners and sponsors who happen to make this program a success tonight. And to my special guests and panelists tonight, I'd like to thank each and every one of you. You heard the voices of professional experts cut across all spectrum of our lives and careers. We brought in Honorable James Barkley, a native of Liberia, an astute human services social worker who provided his own expertise on sexual gender-based violence. Mr. Barkley, 2022, was elected as city councilman of the city of Philadelphia, not Philadelphia, I should say, but Pleasantville in New Jersey. We want to thank him so much. We also brought to the stage tonight a beautiful lady, Natasha Sandy, a career nurse who has been in the business since 2009 when she obtained a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. She provided her own perspective as relates to the fight against sexual assault in our community. And of course, we tied it up with a law enforcement expert named Musa Kaba of the Philadelphia Police Department. He was on point. He made his case and said, the law is the law. If you violate, the law will definitely hold you accountable. We want to thank him for his presentation tonight. And of course, we brought in a psychiatrist and one who is noted and deeply rooted in her community for her role, Emma Garway, a Maryland University scholar. She also provided her own perspective of things as it relates to the fight against sexual gender-based violence. And of course, the least but not the last, Sata Taylor, an employee of the Department of Human Services of the city of Philadelphia. She provided her own perspective as it relates to the fight against sexual gender-based violence and sexual assault within our own community. Again, we wanted to thank the president herself, Madam Siondi Kofa Komote, for providing this opportunity. This program couldn't have been a success without her tremendous efforts that she has put in alongside other officials of her leadership and of course, the board of directors. Earlier on, we have the national vice president of the Union of Liberian Association in the Americas, Honorable Minerva Grant. She provided ULA perspective in terms of collaboration and how we as a people and the community can fight these menace that continue to take roots within our community. So with that being said, to you, our viewers tonight, we want to thank you for your time, 2 hours of your precious time on a Friday evening. We want to say thank you for tuning in tonight, for putting together all of your concerns, your questions. We couldn't have been this far without your interventions. And so we thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Until we meet again, be safe, be your brother's keeper. And thank you so much. I've been your moderator, Stephen Bender. Until we meet again, blessed and good evening. Bye-bye.
Good night, good night, good night.